Elon Musk's long-term roadmap for SpaceX revolves around a single massive objective: placing 1 million people in a self-sustaining city on Mars by 2050. But in February 2026, that timeline hit a massive delay. Musk announced the Mars colonization program would be pushed back by 5 to 7 years. This shift was driven by a 2024 feasibility study in the journal Nature, identifying a critical delta-V deficit. Starship's current design is too heavy. The propellant supply is completely depleted long before executing a return trajectory, making a crewed round trip physically impossible. Before SpaceX can target the red planet, they have to solve the fundamental physics of deep space travel, forcing a strategic pivot to a destination much closer to home. SpaceX has deprioritized its Martian goals to focus its engineering talent on NASA's Artemis program and establishing a permanent presence on the Moon. This transition centers on the Human Landing System, or HLS. NASA expects an uncrewed demonstration in 2026, followed by a crewed landing as early as 2027. Adapting Starship for the Moon requires significant hardware changes, including the addition of high-mounted hot gas thrusters to keep the Raptor engines from blasting lunar soil into the landing site. The stakes for this partnership are absolute. If SpaceX fails to deliver a working lunar lander, the funding and flight heritage required for their entire deep space architecture will disappear. The primary constraint is mass. At over 200 tons, Starship is far too heavy to launch from Earth and reach the Moon in a single bound. It must stop and park in low Earth orbit. To reach deep space, Starship has to be refueled in orbit. This requires a series of tanker missions to dock with the main ship and transfer hundreds of tons of propellant while traveling at orbital velocities. This internal schematic highlights a top GAO risk: cryogenic boil-off. Solar radiation causes super-chilled propellant to heat up and escape as gas. To prevent this, SpaceX is developing active subcooling and advanced insulation to keep oxygen and methane liquid for weeks. These systems will face their definitive test during a late 2026 propellant transfer demonstration, which is the make-or-break milestone for the entire Artemis landing plan. Orbital refueling is the central constraint for the entire program. Without a successful demonstration of technology, Starship remains trapped in Earth's orbit. Even if the fuel stays cold, perfecting the Raptor main engines for deep space reliability remains one of the program's steepest hardware climbs. After a March 2025 fuel leak destroyed a test vehicle, SpaceX introduced welded fuel joints in the new version of the Raptor, which flew for the first time during Flight 12 in May 2026. Beyond hardware, SpaceX is facing new regulatory pressure. A NASA Inspector General report now requires a redundant digital flight control override in the HLS cockpit to ensure astronauts can take manual control during an emergency. NASA is also enforcing test-like-you-fly principles. Instead of using stripped-down prototypes, SpaceX is being forced to use fully mass-representative vehicles to prove the ship can handle the structural loads of a crewed mission. This friction with federal safety boards is transforming SpaceX from an experimental laboratory into a certified launch provider, trading its culture of rapid iteration for the rigid reliability required for human spaceflight. These lunar tests are the only way to prepare for the even harsher isolation of Mars, where the logistics of survival become a matter of complex chemistry. To get home from the red planet, SpaceX must utilize in-situ resource utilization, or ISRU. This means mining Martian ice and soil to manufacture return propellant on site. Producing 600 tons of liquid oxygen for a return flight requires a solar array covering over 38,000 square meters. But outside of small laboratory experiments, the massive power plants and water mining infrastructure needed to support this do not yet exist. Since Martian propellant production is decades away, mastering orbital refueling and engine reliability via the Moon is the only mathematical path to keeping the deep space program alive. The Artemis contract provides the specific technical and financial scaffolding SpaceX needs to build a flight-ready interplanetary architecture. NASA is effectively subsidizing Starship's development while enforcing the safety benchmarks required to survive the environment beyond Earth's orbit. The Moon has become the mandatory proving ground. If SpaceX cannot solve the logistics of lunar landing over the next 2 years, the dream of a multi-planetary future will remain out of reach.